Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Full Pelt Music Podcast. This week features The Exact Opposite, the new project from Nigel Powell and Jamie Stewart. But before then, the usual reminders from myself. If you would, please do follow Full Pelt on social media. We're on Facebook at Full Pelt and on Twitter and Instagram at Full Pelt Music. And again, if you would, please do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, wherever you're watching or listening. Welcome again, listeners, to the Full Pelt Music Podcast. Absolutely delighted today to have on two special guests, the exact opposite. So Nigel Powell, Jamie Stewart. I'm sure many music aficionados will be familiar with these two gentlemen. Been around the block. I don't want to make you sound old, so apologies for that. But you know,
What did you say?
but yeah, obviously, you know, it's a great opportunity to talk to you fine gentlemen about the exact opposite. So I think the best place to begin is the beginning, and I'm really keen just to know where the nucleus for this project was, because as I say, you know, Dive, Unbelievable Truth, Dust Bowl, Sad Song Company, I absolutely love. Obviously, Nigel with Frank Turner in the past. You know, a lot of experience both together and apart. So how did this latest connection between the two of you come about?
Do you want to go for it, Nigel? Or
no, you go ahead, Jamie. You're far more articulate.
here we go. So I've probably been less active musically than Nigel has over the last however many years, 10 years or whatever. But ever since we stopped playing as Dive, I never stopped writing songs. But I didn't really do anything with them. I wasn't going out and starting a solo project or anything like that. I was just continuing to write songs and kind of filing them away, but getting bored of them and then moving on to the next stuff. And luckily, just under a couple of years ago now, like Nigel kind of out of the blue was like, sort of, what are you up to? Fancy getting together? Fancy trying something different? And yeah, that was pretty much it. Am I right, Nigel?
Yeah, I mean, we need a better story, but that was it really. I mean, I had just been short of time really for kind of about a decade and a half, but I've always loved Jamie's songwriting because it's kind of exactly what I want out of music in many ways, which is it's idiosyncratic, it's its own thing. It's kind of weird, but it's also not like, hey, look at me, I'm weird. It's just its own thing without having to be demonstrative about it. And you know, it's like this might get me into trouble with Jamie. It's like a real songwriter, but then it's slightly skew if. So yeah, when over the pandemic, I ended up with not too much to do. I'd made another Sad Song co-album, but I prefer working with other people because collaboration is always better. So I got in touch with Jamie and said, "Hey, you got songs?" And he went, "God, yes!" So, and then we got together, started playing them. Initially, we didn't know if it was going to be more people and make a band out of it, but we started playing, and I said, "Why don't we try it with programmed bass lines and just the two of us?" And for me, that gave it a kind of a USP. Not wanting to sound like I'm in an advertising agency or something, but and then I think once we settled on that, it was like, yeah, this is a thing.
And as usual, like, you know, if I do bring the ideas for songs or the nucleus like for those songs, like, then Nigel just has this habit of making them better and improving them. So, and that's just one of the ways is using program bass, but obviously the percussion and the singing and making it more accessible, I suppose, and, you know, making bits of songs repeat rather than just doing them once and then end the song after a minute and a half or something like that. Just, I don't know, pop sensibility.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously, I for one am really glad that this reconnection obviously has happened, and we get to talk about Exact Opposite, because one of my favourite albums of the year so far, and I know it's going to be up there come the end, is Skill Issues, so the debut release from yourselves. It come out springtime, April, I believe. Yeah, we've all had a few months with it now, and it's still such a fantastic record. To me, it's just one that I mean, every time I listen to it, there's just new bits I pick out and go, yeah, I just love that little nuance in there. For yourselves, obviously, what about 5 months post release now? I mean, firstly, how have you found the reaction to it? Because as you say, you didn't really know where this project was going to go. It's ended up being, something hopefully kind of serious. An album has come out of it. How have you found that response to it?
It's been kind of similar to Dive. I've found. I think throughout what Jamie and I have done musically, we seem to have not very helpfully landed on this area where not necessarily that many people hear about what we do, but every time you come across somebody who's heard what we've done, they go, "That's fantastic! Why haven't I heard of you guys?" And you go, "I don't know," but it's kind of that. I think we reach a limited number of people, but we get a very passionate response to it. Maybe, I don't know.
No, I totally agree with that. Like the few shows that we've done and the people that feedback about the album are just like, man, that's great. Like, why aren't you doing more? Why aren't we doing more? But yeah, anyway.
By the way, I actually just before we came on to record this podcast, I just booked another London show, Jamie. So I'm letting you know that officially now. It's
Okay,
October the 12th. There we go. So, sorry, we're not trying to use up your podcast and have a band meeting, but I just thought I'd drop that in there.
No, it's a fascinating insight into the inner mechanisms of the exact opposite there. It's great. And I mean, that's kind of where I want to delve a little bit more over the next couple of questions as well into the inner sort of thought process and workings. And, flipping where I just said, about, how did you find the reaction of others? Again, we are kind of, 5 months since release, and obviously quite a bit longer than that since you recorded the album. How, as two experienced musicians that have, again, I fear that I'm making you sound older than you are by saying this, but you've been through the process of putting out albums under various guises, be it as main member of the band, producer, etc., etc. At this point in your career, you've put this piece of work together. How do you now feel about the record? Does it still hold? Give you a sense of pride, perhaps. What are your feelings towards it at this point?
I don't listen back too much, right? So once it's out, and because you've listened to it so many times, so you've worked and crafted these songs, and you've put them down in the studio, and you've mixed them, and you've heard every single song inside and out a million times. So once you've actually got that physical copy, or you have the final product back from mastering, I don't end up listening to it that much anymore. But when I do, and this goes for the dive stuff as well, and even Dustball, if I would go back and listen to some of that, you always find things you're like, you know what, I would do that differently. I would improve that bit there, and I don't know. I'm just a bit of an idiot like that. I just always want things to be a slightly better. It's the same when we come off stage after a show. It's like one bit in that one song that no one would have noticed, but I screw something up, and it's like that could be so much better for next time. And I guess it's a little bit like that with the records as well. I hear what could be improved, even though I should just sit back and go, "Wow, that sounds amazing."
That's interesting. Because I feel like maybe I'm kind of opposite to Jamie, the exact opposite, if you will. Because I mixed the album as well. So whereas Jamie heard it a lot of times, I've heard it thousands of times, because mixing is just going. It's like very slow sculpture where you're going over and over the same thing and just kind of scraping off the tiniest bits each time, just trying to improve it. So I'd heard it an awful lot by the time it was released, and that was the time when I'm doing what Jamie's talking about, where you're thinking, how can I improve this? What needs to change? What can we do better? And there are bits and bobs that we did nips and tucks re-recording stuff on reshoots, as they call it in the film world. But mostly it's just like, finding ways to just bring the best out of it. And then I tend to just leave it alone for a while because I've heard it way too much. But when I come back to it later on, I feel like I can hear it kind of fresh, like somebody else hearing it, and that's usually the point. And I remember over the summer, I've been working on a song with somebody else, and then I was driving to a gig with a third band, and when I left the guy's house to go to this other gig, I put our album on in my van, and I hadn't heard it for ages, and kind of listening to it like not forensically because you're in a van and things are going past and you're trying not to crash and die. Um, yeah, I was suddenly like, man, this is really good. It sounds like a proper record. It's really easy when you're making your own music, I think, to fool yourself into thinking, well, I made this, so it can't be a proper record. Um, but then coming back to it, fresh, it was like, this sounds like the real thing. And the songs are really great, and the lyrics, I coming back and having not listened to him for a while, it's like the lyrics, there's so much in there that's great. So I guess I'm just much more positive than Jamie.
Yeah, and as someone that is quite famous in my inner circles for his dad jokes, I love the little reference there to the exact opposite. I saw what you did and I loved it. So fantastic, and obviously, yeah, that is interesting. And just to push a little bit deeper into, the process behind the record and how those inner workings go for the exact opposite. As I say, not to drill the point home to too fine a point, but you've both been through a recording process for albums, various types in the past, and with that comes just a ton of experience, different experiences for you both, compared to when you obviously first were together with Dive. You've now got this sort of these added layers of experience and knowledge and know-how. Was it therefore, completely different kind of experience, the two of you working, especially as, a duo, to record this compared to Dive, or was it just, like riding a bike, working together again, and just, it felt natural? Just interested in that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think working out the dive stuff, Nigel and I always kind of got the heart of each song developed together before the other. I mean, sometimes like the bass lines would dictate. Generally, Ben would bring in guitar lines later on. But yeah, the sort of essence of the song would be worked out by Nigel and I kind of first anyway. So that working relationship and dynamic has always been the start of each song. So that was easy in a way. Whilst like some of the things that Ben and Tarrant brought to the table in Dive were phenomenal. This is probably a bit easier because there's just less arguing about like tone and just who should be louder or the direction song should take. So you reckon, Nigel?
Yeah. I was going to say certainly the writing part of the process was like a comfortable old pair of shoes, because it was just the same thing. Me and Jamie in a room, and he plays a couple of berserk riffs, and once I've figured out where the one is, I start playing along, and then quite quickly you can feel the song out of that. Recording wise,
that must have been easier because like everyone was an engineer and Dive, and everyone kind of felt like, no, we should do it like this or we should do it like that. And only when it was taken away from us, if someone else was engineering or someone else was producing or whatever, then there'd be less sort of quibbling about how many millimeters away the microphone should be from the other microphone that's on the guitar cab.
yeah, I found the recording very very pleasurable. Maybe that is the reason that there was more of a clarity of vision just between me and Jamie, and I think even though we probably couldn't articulate it particularly, we both knew what it should sound like and were heading the same way. There was still, and there was room within that for us to disagree, which is the exciting stuff about collaboration. But I was we were lucky because a friend of mine has got a recording studio in his garden, and he was going away for a month and asked me to house sit and look after his cats. And I said, I can do that. Is it all right if I use the studio? He said, yeah, it's just going to sit there empty. So we had some time in quite a nice studio, which drumming wise, it didn't make that much difference because I was recording myself. I couldn't really use any of the studio gear. I had to do it the way I normally do with my computer sat next to me. Otherwise, I would have, there's just no other way to do it. But working with Jamie, doing vocals and guitars, that felt really incredibly creative. And also, there were piles of guitar pedals sitting around. So it was like, let's try this. Let's throw one of them in there. Let's see what happens, which isn't something that I've had the opportunity to do before.
A little bit
That,
of time, yeah. Because some of the songs weren't finished at all, like during that window of opportunity of using the studio, and we were kind of writing them as we were there. Like, well, certainly I was writing a lot of the lyrics whilst we were still there, and we were tweaking bits and adding things. So yeah, to have that sort of, like, it was about a month, right, there or thereabouts.
yeah.
Which is incredibly lucky, I'd say.
I mean, it kind of wasn't a full-time month because Jamie was working, so he was having to come in days when they wouldn't notice his absence. Um, but yeah, that's true. It is something I forgot about because we we never actually we didn't finish Look at Him Go before the studio. In fact, it didn't have a middle eight, and I can't remember what we did. I think I just kind of played something, imagined how it might go, and I played something on the drums, and then we figured out something that would go with it or something like that. It was
Yeah.
really vague.
No, when we came to the studio, the song was called "Not Blondie" because I was like, "This sounds like Blondie," and you're like, "It's not Blondie." Like, so that was the name of the song, but it was just a riff basically, and then it became the lead song on the album. So yeah, it was all worked out there and then in the studio.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
does that answer your question? I feel like we drifted off the point and it just started reminiscing, but hopefully that's good for
Oh, yeah, absolutely is. It's really fascinating to just get that glimpse, as I say, into how this fantastic album has come about. And I always am happy to do some cheap plugs on the podcast, and I definitely encourage listeners, if you haven't, for some reason, I mean, I'd like to think if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have listened to the album already. As I say, it's a dedicated fan base. But if you haven't, I really do encourage you to. There are links in the bio of the episode, and fans can get a physical copy still, and t-shirts and bits like that from the band's website. Definitely always helpful to do that, and to give them a little bit more of a taste into the album. Just want to focus on one of the singles, one of the songs that have come from the album recently, and that is FFS, which I'm sure the listeners will understand that. And yeah. Firstly, because I want to get into the video is the key bit I want to get into, but before the video, just a quick overview. What is the song about? What does the song mean to you?
For me, those just about making the same mistakes over and over and not learning from it, and hence the title, like that you've just found yourself in that position again. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's in drop D for the guitarists out there, and I wanted it to be this sort of quite heavy, dark song about making mistakes over and over again. It turned out to be really sort of bright and happy. I don't know how that happened, but sort of accidentally, and it's quite a poppy song actually. Um, Nigel, your take on that? I was like, drop D, yeah, let's go, but no, it wasn't.
Yeah, well, I mean, my memory of it when you first brought it into the rehearsal room was was you had that rhythm, which is the da 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 ga 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 da, da. And I'm like, hey, that's Funky Cold Medina by Tone Loc.
Oh, yeah.
So I started playing Funky Cold, well, which is sampled off a Rolling Stones record, but I started playing that, and I mean, I think it's interesting when um, songwriting intention doesn't necessarily marry up with how things come out in the real world because I like that dichotomy in this song between these lyrics which are like, oh bloody hell, everything's gone wrong again, and I'm managing to ruin my own life again. But the just the sound of the song makes me smile. And the mental image I always got from it was driving along kind of the um, coastal highway in California in a convertible with the top down, and it's just got that "hey, everything's fantastic" kind of sound to it, and then you've got these lyrics, which are more typically Jamie.
Yeah, no, I love that as well. It is a great song and it works on so many levels, as does obviously the video, which regular listeners of this podcast will know that I have a bit of an obsession around music videos because I grew up with music TV, and it's just another way to connect with a band and get an insight into their artistry, and especially at a time, I make myself sound old now, before the internet, it was a way to just see another side of a band, and I got, for example, a lot of the clothes I'd wear or hairstyles I'd have it because I'd seen it in a music video. So I'm very passionate about them, but it's a dying art, and sadly, there's been numerous episodes of this podcast where I've looked for a video to talk about with the artist, and that there isn't one because for budgetary reasons or whatever it is, they've not decided to go that route, and that's fine, but we've got a great video to talk about. The video for FFS, which I believe, Nigel, you were the sort of director and visionary behind it, whereas Jamie, you were the band
Visionary.
Jamie.
Visionary makes me sound like I'm David Lean or something.
I did tell you I was passionate about videos. But yeah.
It came from me. I generally watch and read more about film than I do about music. I'm very, very interested in film. In many ways, I'd rather get a proper filmmaker to make videos, but we haven't got the money to do that. So I do come up with these ideas myself, and they're usually based on what's available or a technique that I've managed to come up with, managed to learn how to do, or something like that. Not for the first time actually in this for this album, making videos. The initial idea came from Taskmaster, because there was a Taskmaster task where they had to, I can't remember what they had to do. They were given various objects which they couldn't see, and they had to identify the film from the objects. But in order not to see it, each contestant had a box on their head with like pictures of the sides of their face on it. And I thought, that's cool. We should do a video just like that. And then I thought, if we're wandering about, how are we going to see out the front if we've just got a picture of our face stuck on the front? So I was learning how to use a program called Blender, which is like it's mostly for 3D modeling, but you can do various film editing, special effects stuff in there. So I learned how to track footage in there, so you could put a plane on something else if you got tracking markers. So then I went, well, you could do the box and then like the back three sides of pictures, but then the front I could track an actual face on, which means you could be singing it. That would be amazing. And it would look really weird. My initial idea, I always seem to have ideas that are way too complicated. I don't know if you remember me telling you this, Jamie, but my initial way of doing it was I looked into how much tiny projectors cost, and I was going to get like a chest rig that would hold a projector in front of the box and then project the face on while he was walking around. But that ultimately would have been madness. So I did the technological way. And then after I'd had that idea, it was just figuring out some interesting things that you could do with that setup. I feel very lucky because Jamie was completely game for wandering about the middle of an extremely busy city on a summer's day with a box on his head.
There's just there comes a point where you stop caring, though. Like the other locations, whether it was in a field or fewer people around. That was all good. We'd kind of done that bit of shooting, so I was used to wearing the box. I wasn't very good at wearing the box, but after like a minute of standing near the Westgate shopping centre in Oxford with like hundreds and thousands of tourists wandering around, after about a minute, the stares and the looks, you don't even feel them anymore. Like, so it wasn't too bad. Except
Yeah.
someone did push me over at one point. I don't know if that's
Really.
Well, someone just walked past and just went, like pushed me in the back, like for no reason. Maybe just because they don't like people wearing boxes on their heads. I don't know. But...
A particular phobia about cardboard.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking about it now, and obviously, something like that. I was wondering, I wonder how many, funny looks that, Jamie would be getting during that. But part of me actually thinks like society, with TikTok and YouTubers and all that, I don't know if society's maybe just going to get a bit like, oh yeah, another guy with a box on his head. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it was a bit half and half. I thought there would be more incredulous looks, but it all seemed to go quite smoothly.
The Westgate shopping centre is full of people that are more worried about their own looks than the way other people look. So yeah, maybe they just didn't. And you do see some weird things in Oxford. It's a great city for that. Like.
Oh, I love Oxford.
Yeah. The other thing is, there were plenty of teenagers around, and my experience of teenagers, having brought up a couple of them, is I doubt any of them even noticed. If you'd walked up to any of the teenagers, you would have gone there. What do you think that bloke was doing with a box on his head? And they would have gone, "What bloke with a box on his head?"
Yeah. I can attest to that. Situational awareness isn't a life skill that's really acquired by the youth of today. As a father of two children that I feel like they're teenagers. They're not yet, but they act like it. But yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the end result is just a great music video. As someone that loves music videos, I can really appreciate it because it's just an enjoyable watch. Which is what they should always be about. And it's definitely worth listeners, again, cheap plug, going and checking it out. There'll be the link in the bio. If you haven't seen it yet and you want to see Jamie with a box on his head, this is your opportunity.
I don't want to get off the point, but if you like music videos, have you come across a Dutch band called De Start?
I am familiar with De Start, yes.
Because they have some incredible music videos. The Witch Doctor video. I'm so terrible at plugging my own band, but other bands I can plug. The Start are amazing. The Witch Doctor video is great. The Kitty video is great.
But they don't seem to look like they would cost the earth either. They would break the bank, those kind of videos. And there are, if there's a great idea, there are ways of making videos for bands out there that shouldn't cost too much money. You can just get it done yourself. I mean, all this is done on a phone, right?
Yeah, I mean, the videos we've made, that FFS was the most expensive because I had to hire a drone for one shot and hire some majorettes for one shot. But that was the only thing that cost any money. The previous one, Look at Him Go, cost literally nothing. That didn't cost anything at all, that video. And neither did the previous one. So you work for us now. So, but yeah, I know what you mean. And with De Start, their lead singer, he's kind of their main songwriter as well. He also comes up with the ideas for all the videos and directs some of them. And he's a nice bloke as well, bastard. I met him, I happened to meet him a couple of summers ago at a festival. And not only is he talented, he's very charming and sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, no. But I mean, it's such a valid point you raise, and something I've kind of highlighted on a few videos with artists on this podcast as well. As you can get a really stunning visual that doesn't need to cost a lot of money to have a big impression on the viewer. So excellent, and I love that you seem to share my passion for music videos. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I mean, we're lucky also in that Jamie's got a responsible proper job, but I managed to spend all my time making music and stuff. And certainly if you come across a young band um, talking about either making music or making videos, you just have to say, look, ideas are free. So whatever you need to do to have ideas, go for a walk, spend a long time in the shower, lie in bed, um, just have as many ideas as you can. Um, and then you can figure out which ones are feasible. And the other thing that you can give that's free is your time. So with the Look at Him Go video for us, I taught myself how to do animation because it was free, and I taught myself how to use Blender for FFS, and because that was free, and that was just me making lots of mistakes, doing it 3 times, and only the third time it looking right. But that means you can come out with something. Don't accept the shonky first draft. Give it another go, make it better.
Yeah, fantastic advice. Commitment is free as well, isn't it? Put that bit of effort into it, and you'll reap the rewards from it. And yeah, no, I love that we've gone a bit deeper there. And I'm going to bring it back to the exact opposite. And you've touched earlier, Nigel, on a new show that's been booked. So I just want to finish us off with a bit of a conversation around the live side. Obviously, yeah, best place for listeners to stay up to date these days is social media. So I always give out the social handles at this point and just say, like, make sure you're following the band, and you'll see when these shows are announced. And you make my life so much easier because it's the same social handle across all of them, and it's a pretty simple one. It's the exact op, and it will flash up in the screen and it'll be in the bio. So listeners, do please go and follow the band. If for no other reason than the fact that I haven't had to read out 4 separate social handles with underscores and all kinds of other bits and bobs in there. So appreciate it. So you've obviously played your first sort of shows together as the exact opposite. And again, similar question to earlier, really. You're now doing it as a duo. How has that felt for you to get out and do that?
I can't speak for Nigel, but it was definitely scarier for me. Like, there's definitely a comfort thing that comes with having lots of other, not lots, but other people on stage that are also making noise and distracting attention, and for it to be just the 2 people, and on top of that, being sort of playing to a click track, playing to some tracked bass or sounds or whatever, and having an earpiece in is just quite much more rigid than what I'm used to. And so it was a little bit challenging, but in another way, it's really easy to maintain eye contact with Nigel, and that's the only person I have to worry about. I don't have to worry about someone else slinging around the stage or screwing up. Just the 2 of us. So I did find it challenging. I miss that comfort, but it's definitely nice, especially when you're playing small venues. So there's a lot more space.
Yeah, I mean, I empathize with Jamie because he is the only melodic thing happening on stage. The guitar, if he takes a moment and stops, all the music stops because it's just the drums and the bass. And who wants drum and bass? Um, uh, I mean, I've done more gigs than Jamie, um, so I'm probably slightly harder to freak out with any gig situation, having done thousands of the things. But I mean, not wanting to sound soppy, but for the most part, I just love it. I love playing live, and so you add these things up. I love playing live. I love playing drums. Um, I love Jamie's songs. I love Jamie's voice. I love Jamie's guitar playing. So, because it's the 2 of us, when we get the opportunity, I set up right at the front of the stage, facing across, looking at Jamie, um, which again is an extra pleasure because I've spent an entire career looking at people's asses facing the other way. So to actually be able to see what Jamie's doing and to kind of interact with how he's feeling the song emotionally, like through his face, it's just a massive pleasure for me. I've got nothing bad to say about it at all. Sorry, Jamie.
No, that's beautiful. That is really beautiful. And again, the prompt to the listeners is when these shows are booked and announced, jump on it, get a ticket, go support grassroots music venues, go support independent artists, and obviously get to watch the joy in Nigel's face, and obviously the fear in Jamie's a little bit. But yeah, it's been amazing talking to you. We have one final question, which is always the only static question we have in the podcast. We always finish with the same one, and it was brought in after a few episodes because I found that I was talking a lot with the guests about the music industry, issues within the music industry. So I thought, I'm going to compact it into one question rather than let it take over the entire episode. So I call it Magic Wand. So we're going to step into fantasy land for a moment. I'll give you both a magic wand, so you can both pick an answer. But if this magic wand, with it, you can change one thing about the music industry, but one thing only, which is where it gets quite tough. And I can see you both got your thinking faces on. So, a couple of magic wands here, one each. Who wants to go first?
I was going to say something really childish, like eliminate a band that I don't like, but really personal. And fair play to them. If they want a payday, that's all good, right? So I think it would be somehow fixing small venues and making them easier for promoters to turn a profit and the venues themselves to stay afloat, and for young artists, bands just have more opportunity to go out and play in front of people, because it's shrinking and I see it disappearing. We were so lucky when we were coming up that there was just no end of places to go and play in every town. And you could really learn your craft, right? And whether you were playing in front of 2 people or 200 people or 2,000 people, right? But it's really quite hard now to get shows. There has to be a DIY approach, or there's just a few promoters in each town that can just about make it work. But it's hard for them. So if there was some way of magically fixing that, I don't know what the answer is. But if I could, I would do that.
Yeah,
that's a really good one. Really good one, Jamie. Which puts the pressure on Nigel to come up with a good one as well, doesn't it? So.
Oh God. Okay, pressure. Well, I mean, since Jamie's got the venues covered, there's kind of 2 which are related, but the first one I don't think it's not realistic and possible. If it was like a totally mystical magic wand, which magic wands tend to be,
They do.
Somehow I would want to, amongst the broader public, not people like you who are motivated and into their music, but the kind of public at large who consume music slightly more casually, I would want to try and remind them that recorded music has a value. Because the one thing that, I mean, people have got used to the fact that it's on tap and it's essentially free, which and that has a lot of repercussions. I mean, it makes it very hard for young bands, little bands, small bands to kind of make ends meet and be able to go, we've made a good record, we've sold, we sold 2,000 CDs, and that's made us enough to make another record, and that kind of stuff. Do 2,000 streams and you've made a quarter of a penny,
Yeah.
and that's not gonna do you any good. But but that, in a way, it's blaming consumers for stuff that's not their fault. But it's like victim blaming in a way. So I guess what I would do with my magic wand is I would take all of the shares of Spotify that are owned by major labels and distribute them amongst musicians. Because one of the biggest kind of internal problems is that Spotify as a company is not really motivated to try and pay artists well, because their major shareholders are the record companies anyway, who own the catalog. So as long as the catalog is making money for Spotify that then is flowing to the shareholders as profits, it doesn't really matter if the artists don't get anything, which is very short-sighted, but that's the way it is. So I think if you can remove that obvious clash of interests, then I think that would at least start the ball rolling on people going, you know what, if we don't pay artists, we're not going to have any product to sell. It's like baked bean makers forgetting to grow any more beans.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you laughing at me, Jamie? Are you laughing at my analogy?
It was just so eloquent right up until that. It was so good, such a good point. And then beans came into it.
Well, there we go.
But I mean, two very fine answers, and intrinsically linked in many ways as well. Because I mean, the future of music is dependent on bands being able to, afford to record, and put music out and live by doing so. And obviously, to be able to play shows, there has to be venues, and that's how bands grow. I mean, so many obviously great organizations out there trying to fix these issues. Music Venue Trust with the venues, for example. And I know, Tom Gray has had a great campaign to try and look at tackling the issues around streaming and potentially, equitable remuneration being brought in. And if only the magic wand was real and we could fix these overnight. But I mean, there are some fantastic individuals out there trying to fix these, and it's always great just to flag those up. And hopefully by having this conversation again, I imagine the listeners listening to this podcast are probably going to be familiar with these issues already. And Nigel, again, if you could just have this wand that made everyone aware of these issues and actually take note. And to be honest, one of the catalysts over the last week, of course, has been the Oasis debacle around tickets. Dynamic ticket modeling has been an issue for a couple of years now. No one in the mass public has talked about it. You need a catalyst sometimes to spark that debate, and hopefully, that will continue and something good might come up of it. But still, great.
I mean, just to jump in with a kind of a bit of positivity on the other side of things, I think I feel like we're at a absolute creative high point pretty much in the entire world now, because recording technology now exists on your laptop that used to be available, to only if you went to really expensive studios. It's democratized creativity in a fantastic way. So nowadays, if somebody who has the weirdest, most bonkers idea can go, right, I can record that, I can figure out how to make that a reality. But trying then to connect that recording with people who really want to hear it, that's the bit where it's become almost impossible. And instead of making records, major labels really inserted themselves as the gatekeepers in there. I'm going negative again. Positive stuff. High watermark of creativity. There's amazing music out there if you can find it.
Absolutely echo that. And just to bring us full circle, obviously some of that amazing music that the listeners need to check out. Exact Opposite, Skill Issue, fantastic album. It's going to be up there in the album of the year polls, I'm sure, for those that have heard it. And obviously the video, check that out. Follow the band on social media to stay up to date with everything coming from them. That's my final message to the listeners. Gentlemen, what would be your final message today for the listeners?
Listen to Paul. He knows what he's talking about.
I think you're the first person that said that. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast, gentlemen. Thank you so much for giving up your time and doing it.
Absolute pleasure, Paul. Thank you very much for this.
Thanks, Uncle.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. I really do hope you enjoyed that chat there with the exact opposite. Do make sure you follow the band across social media to stay up to date with everything coming from them. And of course, also follow Full Pelt. We're on Facebook at Full Pelt and on Twitter and Instagram at Full Pelt Music. Finally, if you would, please do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, wherever you're watching or listening, because we'll be back very soon with another episode of the Full Pelt Music Podcast.